The first question I have is on social media, and for me, Twitter in particular.
X, okay.
So you've talked about this before. I've talked to you about this with you. Um, you've talked about like the importance of guarding your mind and not exposing yourself to too much crap on social media or media in general.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so this is I've like been trying to pay attention to my own usage, and in general, like I guard myself pretty well, but I find myself like for my career, I work in tech and I need to follow the latest news in tech, and right now especially it feels like things are moving so fast, and I have to be just ingesting the new information like 24/7 because there's constantly something new coming out that I feel like I have to be aware of. And so I'm trying to figure out like the balance between, knowing what I need to know, but not getting, say, obsessed with it or something. And not, excuse me.
Okay, that's a difficult question because what you're saying is true. There's different. Go ahead.
I was going to say, to follow up on it, I've noticed like friends and other people in other domains also have similar issues. Like people who work in social media, they have to be on social media to know what the trends are and stuff. And
Correct.
but it's tough.
It's tough and it's also hazardous.
Mm-hmm.
So if we just go to the level of the brain, the rate at which the world is evolving is accelerating, and that acceleration is accelerating. And it's very interesting. I'm an old man, so sometimes I watch movies from the 40s or the 50s or the 60s, and then I watch the newer version that was made, say, in the early 2000s or something like that, or 2010. And it's remarkable how much faster and how much more stimulation is packed into the later versions. Same story, same amount of information, but the brain has been habituated to uh, massive amounts of stimulation delivered very rapidly. And it feels like something's wrong if that's not happening. This is happening everywhere, but especially in media. And so I also heard someone mention TikTok brain, which is maybe something we should talk about as a new something new to consider. And maybe I will talk about it now. The brain becomes habituated to stimulation, and the AIs are quite capable of serving up exactly the stimulation that's going to be most likely to keep you on the screen. And our brains are not equipped to handle, especially a young brain is not equipped to handle this. And so it's very dangerous. I'm not sure if it's dangerous to the brain, but it's certainly dangerous to the mind, because once you become hooked to that, it becomes very difficult to be satisfied with anything less. I've heard people say, you can tell me if this is true, that some kids are not able to sit through a movie because it doesn't move fast enough, and they don't have the attention span. Would you say that's true?
I don't know. I think it would depend on the movie. If it's an old movie, I could see that being true. Or it depends how good the movie is too, right?
I would hope so, but I've heard a few tell me that no, I don't have the attention span to watch movies anymore. They want videos, or they want TikTok, or they want Instagram, or something like that, which would make sense. Your brain is exquisitely designed to deal with whatever milieu it finds itself. And so let's say if we found ourselves in the savannah and we had to hunt gazelle, our ears would become very sensitive. Our eyes would become attuned to the landscape, and we would adapt to that. And the brain does adapt to that. Now, I don't know if there's brain damage per se, but if this kind of stimulation is given to a brain that's too young, then and if it's given in sufficient doses, it is possible that the pruning process, the brain, a child of a year has 100 billion neurons that are synapsing all over the place, something like that. And as they grow older, these neurons are pruned. Now, as you get older, there's less of that pruning, and there's more reinforcement, Hebbian learning. The neurons that fire together wire together. And so that process is plastic to a point, but if you prune certain neurological subsystems, then you may not be able to get them back. Now, I don't want to cause undue fear, but I do think it's very, very important to consider the warning that we just don't know what this is going to do to the brain in the long term if we give it to kids that are young. Now, with an adult whose brain is already formed, it's not going to hurt them as much as it would someone else. So that's at the level of the brain. At the level of just, let's talk behaviorism at the moment. The brain likes what it's used to, and it becomes used to whatever it's exposed to. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's prison or, being on a ship. There was guys during the whaling, the times when people would go out on boats and whaling, they just loved being on a ship.
Right.
I mean, so and same thing with prison, believe it or not. Sometimes people go back to prison because that's something they know and they feel comfortable. So at the level of just on the principle, we like what we know. The brain likes what it knows. That's another potential danger, potentially, depending on what the world is going to be like in the future. And then if we go to the level of psychology, behaviorism, we see that this variable schedule of reinforcement and this incessant reinforcement and this wide variety of reinforcers in the form of Instagram pictures or TikTok videos, or God, isn't that interesting, or new animal video, or new somebody's doing something new or crazy. then we know from behaviorism this is how this works. We can condition people to do and want or like just about anything. These are techniques that were developed over the last, the Korean War, World War II. So let's say 50, 70 years of. I mean, this is in addition to everything that had already been known, but like the very concerted effort by intelligence agencies and military folks to learn how to do psychological warfare. On our enemies or whatever, our enemies, their enemies, or our enemies, depending. So then that's at the level of the mind. And then there's the issue of opportunity costs. For every hour that you spend doing something that really has no yield or has very little yield, how many hours have you lost that were very important developmentally for learning things of substance? Now, this has been a problem for a long time, and people, and to be fair, people legitimately complained about kids and TV, right? And that's understandable. I mean, if you're just watching the Three Stooges, however wonderful they may be, you're not learning what you could be learning if, say, you were watching something like in the old days Star Trek or Sesame Street, or something that has some modicum of the interest of the child at heart. So now at a social level, that makes the society extremely vulnerable. And because whoever controls the media controls the mind and controls the masses. And so this is why there's been so much interest by intelligence folks on owning this stuff. And we've seen that play out in recent history. but it's not good for the people unless their interest is the good of the people. And it doesn't seem to be that at this time. So we're at a very hazardous time. Now, this is all occurring in the context of the acceleration of the amount of information that's available. And in a field like yours, you absolutely have to stay abreast of what's happening. But how can you do that? Now, traditionally, the way that that's done is by specializing until you know more and more and more, until you know absolutely everything about virtually nothing, right? But that won't work for a human life. So somehow or another, there has to be countervailing trends, and that unfortunately has to be at the level of the individual, or conceivably at the level of the family, I would think. Although I suppose you could have a small tribe or something of people that decided, hey, we're not going to do this way. But in tech, I think that's a hazard. And the other problem is that a lot of tech guys are already kind of skewed towards math and engineering and just focusing on what's really concrete, and they don't care about the girls, they don't care about the game, they don't care about the cars, they just want to do the numbers. Now that's a caricature, but there's still nonetheless that brain selection process. So what you're bringing up is a very, very good question. I don't know that I have a single answer to it, except that if you return to the center, which this is not, it takes a very special guy or woman in tech to have the presence of mind and the horizon of thought to realize, hey, this is not all there is to life, making money than going out and partying to spend it. Who also says, well, listen, I need to return to the center periodically during my day, during my nights. And that's the only thing I can think of. Now, I suppose you could, for other people that aren't interested in this kind of stuff, they could go and, do some sports, go to the gym, run, do something healthy that's completely unrelated. But other than that, it's very hard to know how quickly this is headed, where it's headed. Follow up, please.
What are you referring to as where it's headed?
Well, I think it was Sam Altman that has said recently, we're going for AGI. We don't care how much it costs. If it costs 50 billion, if it costs 500 billion, we're going for AGI. Yeah. So if we're headed to AGI, and also there's word. There was a time when AGI just meant artificial general intelligence, and it's a multimodal AI that can pass the Turing test. Well, now it's getting harder and harder to distinguish AGI from ASI, artificial superintelligence. Go ahead.
Some people have defined like a grid of different levels of AGI. And the lower levels is what ChatGPT is at the moment. And the highest level is something like superintelligence.
Okay, well but the word superintelligence, go ahead.
There's defining, there's a rubric to define each one, which I should try to find it, because it was quite useful at understanding what people mean by AGI, because they're very different.
Right, it's a moving target.
Very different, yeah. It's
like the Turing test. I mean, we take the Turing test and laugh at it pretty much.
Yeah.
Because that was passed a long time ago. 6 months is a long time ago now. So, so what does this mean for humanity? Is another question. And if you want, we can go into that. But I think we need to make a clear distinction between ASI and AGI. Very, very clear. And
let me
go ahead. The other reason, go ahead.
I want to try to find this rubric.
Okay. And then, who was it? It was the ex-CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt, was saying yesterday that, well, what we have to do as soon as this thing becomes recursively improving or learns recursively, then we need to pull the plug. Well, I don't think it's going to be that easy.
Because you can't pull the plug.
Exactly. Well, we presume we can't pull the plug.
Well, because I've made that same argument. I think once this becomes recursively self-improving, it means it's self-replicating, and it's probably going from one machine to another at that point. And so you have no control over it anymore once it's at that point.
Correct. So how are you going to unplug? If you unplug, you'll unplug everything, every system, logistic system that we have. Pretty much, you'd have to.
Yeah.
So, did you find what you were looking for?
Yes. This was proposed by DeepMind researchers.
Is this Denise? He's got a good mind.
Let me see who is.
Hablis, is that how you pronounce his last name? This was the team leader and a very brilliant guy from Britain. I'm just talking to the folks here, who led the team that beat Go a couple of years. It seems like the ancient history, but the game Go, this ancient and complex game of strategy with many, many, many different permutations of gameplay, and it beat any human for the last time, I think several years ago, and it's just accelerating from there.
Okay, here.
And let me tell him who Eric Schmidt. Eric Schmidt used to be CEO of Google, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But now he's writing books with Henry Kissinger, and I highly recommend a book that he wrote with Henry Kissinger on society and AI. It's a very good book.
Yeah, The Age of AI.
The Age of AI, thank you. And then I was going to mention one other person, but if you send that, we can post it. That'd be helpful to people. Mm. And Sam Altman, for those of you who don't know, is the CEO of OpenAI, and I don't know if he's still CEO of Y Combinator, but he's hell-bent on having a spending whatever it takes to build what he's calling AGI, and he said recently that ChatGPT 4 is the stupidest that we'll ever have to deal with, and that ChatGPT 5 is going to be some quantum, I'm saying that in loose terms, quantum leap from ChatGPT 4. And the other thing that's concerning, of course, is that these people are all in with the DoD. It could be concerning or it could be reassuring depending on your ilk. Did you find it?
Yeah. So I sent you a link to it on X, but I'll read it here.
Okay.
So it's a table, and it defines the difference between narrow and general AI.
All right.
And then 0 to 5 levels for each. So
okay.
Level 0 is no AI. And so this would be like
with narrow AI, let's talk about narrow. Are we at 5
mm-hmm.
yet?
Yes.
Okay, so we've already reached 5 on narrow. So we have computers now actually, here's another question before we get to general. I hear people say, well, it's going to be as smart as the smartest human. Okay, got it. And then the level above that's supposed to be as smart as all the humans combined. And I'm just wondering how much of a delta there is between those two.
Right. So
okay, but let's go to general. Where's general now?
Well, first let me define the levels, because they define them strictly. So level 0 is no AI. Level 1 is emerging, which means equal to or somewhat better than an unskilled human.
Okay.
Level 2 is competent, which is at least 50th 50th percentile of skilled adults.
For humans?
So that for humans. So like as good as the average human, essentially. Level 3, and the level 3 is 90th percentile. Level 4 is virtuoso, 99th percentile, and level 5 is superhuman, which is outperforms 100% of humans.
Okay,
and so
go ahead.
For like chess, we're at level 5, right? Chess AI can outperform 100% of humans. Go.
AlphaFold, yeah, protein. This is protein folding, which could be very, very useful for medical research. And then what about reading and writing?
So for things like spelling and grammar checkers, those are narrow AI because they're
right.
Specific.
Are those considered 5 yet?
According to this, they're considered 3.
Well, my spell checker is not going to make it to 3. No way. So, yeah, okay. So, all right, but they're going to be there. They'll be there shortly.
Yeah, narrow specific tasks, and then general is the one that people are more interested in. The one referring to as AGI.
I think though that with regard to medicine and law and let's just use those two, or pharmacy, they're already at virtuoso. Or maybe 3. Maybe they're at 90%, but they're.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone yesterday who was very proud that she had passed the bar on the first try.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's way past that. The bar.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Well, and one thing to note on these tests is that you can train a model that uses those tests as training data, and so they might pass those tests really easily.
Fair enough.
That they're
fair enough, but it could also read every book that was ever written on, let's say the liver. It could read every book that's ever been written in 5 minutes most? Not even 5 minutes. A minute max. Or every book that's written on the pulmonary system and all the literature. It could read and digest that. So I mean, maybe it's 3 at the moment, but they're not showing us GPT-4, right? I mean 5.
5, yeah.
And they have it, but they're not showing it to us. So we don't. So, but the presumption is this is going to happen if it hasn't happened already.
Yeah.
Not in every detail, but people should understand that this is not something that's going to be 3 years from now. Okay, now what about AGI? Artificial General Intelligence.
Right now they define it as the generality is a wide range of non-physical tasks. So they're limiting it to non-physical right now. But it includes
non-physical tasks. What does that mean? Non-physical tasks.
So like reading and writing, actions on the web browser, or any actions on the computer.
They don't mean going out and building a wall out of bricks.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're leaving robotics out of it. Well, that's reasonable. Go ahead.
Yeah. And it includes learning new skills. And so right now we're at level 1, emerging. So it's equal to or somewhat better than an unskilled human. And they're referring to GPT here, essentially.
All right.
It can use some actions. It can query, search, and do some actions, but it doesn't do it that well yet. And then the next level, which is probably what ChatGPT 5 is competent AGI. And that would be at least the average, as good as the average human.
All right. But what makes it general intelligence as opposed to narrow intelligence? Talk about that a bit.
So narrow would be a specific. It's trained to do specific tasks. So like a chess player, it can only do, like the chess AI, if you asked it to write a poem, it wouldn't be able to. If you asked it to, go buy you a sandwich on DoorDash, it would not be able to. It just wouldn't work at all. And so that's narrow. It means it's trained specifically for a specific set of tasks. Where general, which is what we have with like ChatGPT, is that it's trained. It was trained on a specific thing, which was to just predict text. But the result of that is that it's a generalized model, which you can because text is generalized.
It's unexpectedly powerful. It was unexpectedly powerful too, very quickly. Is that fair?
So any task which you can give to it as text, and that it can complete through text, it can attempt to do at least. And so some tasks which are easier, like writing, summarizing, formatting text, it can do that really easily. But then it can do things that are unexpected as well, like it can write programming, like it can write code. You can give it
it can write, so less need for human coders, and a lot of them are losing their jobs.
Yep.
And for graphics, its capacity for graphics is extraordinary, and so a lot of people are losing their jobs.
Mm-hmm. And then so I talked about text ones, and now there's the next wave of these are multimodal, and so not only can it take as text as input, but it can take images or audio as well. It can also output those. So you could give it a screenshot of a web page, and you could tell it, I need to do this. What button should I press?
And this is all GPT 3.5.
No, this would be.
No, I meant, but in this generation, I guess is what I mean to say. In this generation of LLMs.
Right.
But what Sam Altman was saying yesterday is they have something in store that makes this thing look ridiculously stupid and clunky, and that's just what they talk about publicly. Wouldn't it be safe to guess that the governments, militaries, intelligence agencies have, and big tech companies with the resources already have models that can do much more than this, but they're not sharing them yet. I mean, he said that much. We can't, because we don't know how fast society can adapt to them. So that's really on topic too. How fast can society adapt to these changes?
Right.
And that's going to be a combination of our brains, our minds, our society, and our resilience, and other things as well. And it's not too early to be thinking about this, because the society is coming apart at the seams. And we risk war, civil war, or worse. Although civil war is pretty bad. Or some other kind of chaos. I don't want to be over dramatic. So more about the general. What is your take on it? When will we be talking about it? Artificial general intelligence that we're thinking maybe we should unplug this thing. What in principle keeps it from learning recursively at this point?
The architecture of it.
What aspect of the architecture?
Well, for it to learn recursively, it has to be self-replicating, I think. Well, to effectively be learning recursively. It
seems to me, I'm not a specialist. I don't know anything about these things, but it seems to me that self-replicating is just copy paste if you have the hardware.
Yes, but it doesn't have the autonomy to
it doesn't have the autonomy. All right, fair enough.
It's just you give it input, it gives you output.
So let's go back to your original question, unless there's something more on this. Do you remember your original question?
Originally I was asking about keeping up with tech.
Other than the surface layer, is it going to be humanly possible?
What do you mean? To keep up?
Yes, to keep up with anything other than the headlines. And even those are going to be hard because remember, we're not the U.S. and the Anglo world, the Anglophone world, is not the only part of the world that's working on this.
Right, right.
So
I mean, no.
Well, one thing you might do though is you could ask your AI to distill the headlines from around the world for you.
We're already doing it.
You are? Okay.
Well, yeah, people.
But even then, it's not going to work. We can see that it's not going to work. We know that the curve.
Yeah.
We know that the curve is like this. It's probably backwards on the screen. It's like this, and as we approach the asymptote, where there's no way. So the time to think about how to deal with this is now. Would it not be? So what can the poor humans do? We got ourselves in a brand new quandary. Woo-hoo. Was that your question?
I mean, sort of, yeah. Like.
Okay, well, you're in a special situation because you're in the middle of it in tech, okay?
Right, right.
So maybe you guys can be the vanguard, but you're going to have to stay sane, which is not something you've done too well lately. You haven't done bad, but you could guys would be a little bit more sane, right? So now, if you're asking me, I would say what the individual needs to do is kind of what everyone needs to do, which is to know their center and to be able to return to it and understand. So that's one thing, to know their center and know how to get back to it. But then also know why they have this center and what is it about. They need to understand the meaning of life, right? And understand what's important in humanity. Let me see. Could you ask questions? It's easier than for me just to extrapolate. But so go ahead, ask questions, please.
So what I'm thinking is, in this context, is depending on the rate of change and how fast like the AI progresses, we're gonna we have to adapt very differently. And so if things change too fast, then the one big thing is the wealth getting pulled into just, all the tech companies are just gonna get all the wealth that's created, right? If you can create
okay, that's a social level. No, I don't think that's likely.
Why not?
Well, because the wealth is built on the data of the human, the average human, and it just takes legislation and just some clear thinking, and you can see that we need a universal. If the machines are going to be doing the labor, two things are going to happen. One is that the economy will explode. The amount of value created is enormous, and that value is what an economy is made of. And now there's plenty for everybody. There's plenty of energy. There's plenty of food. There's plenty of, it's a time of plenty because the robots can do all the work or do most of the work. And so there has to be a distribution, but there's so much that it's not a problem. And that's actually a very worrisome thing, because whenever humans start talking about utopias, things go sour. So, but that part I don't think is the issue. What part? What would you want money for? And let's think it out from first principles. So we're in the year. Let's say we're 20 years from now. Or 10 years from now. I don't know. The robots are running the farms. The robots are getting unlimited energy from building solar panels and hooking them up. The cars drive us wherever we want to go. If we want a building, the robot builds it out of whatever whatever's around, or it goes out and gets more from the top of a mountain because doesn't have to worry about the cold, or from an asteroid, it doesn't have to worry about getting killed particularly. So now, what concerns you about unequal wealth?
Well, people, I think there'll still be competition on things like real estate and where to live, and
True, and you will always have people who want to do that, and they will find some way to compete with each other about that, because that's the kind of monkey we are. I was reading in the Tao Te Ching today. It says the great way is quite even, yet people prefer byways. In other words, they prefer weirdness instead of just the great way. They're just the simple great way. When the courts are extremely fastidious, the fields are seriously neglected, and the granaries are very empty. They wear colorful clothing, carry sharp swords, eat and drink to their fill, and possess more than enough. This is called the vanity of thieves. So yeah, there will still be that human element. But the abundance for everybody else should be enough to at least mitigate that. Why wouldn't it? I mean, think of it. I mean, other than jealousy and the fact that this person has a house on the Florida coastline, or this person has a house on the ocean in California. Other than that, what's going to be the problem in distribution besides real estate?
I mean, the insanity that we have, we would just probably come up with all sorts of problems.
Such as? Let me give you one.
Sure
Let me give you one.
Sure.
Some people want to make hybrid humans, hybrid with other creatures, or they want to make cyborgs. And other people say, no, that's ethically wrong.
Mm-hmm.
How's that for a problem?
Yeah.
It's not okay to have 4 arms.
Right.
That's not a good example because you need shoulders. It's not okay to have extra eyes built in your head. 2 eyes is all we should have. I think we're getting too hypothetical. I think we need to, let's deal with the here and now. Okay, how do people deal with the accelerating rate of change, the effects of media, social media, on their brains and their well-being? And I think that we can answer now. The others are very interesting questions, and I'd love to discuss them, but I don't think the yield is high enough at the moment for that. So let's talk about returning to the center, and then why someone would want to do this. The center is nothing but reality itself. And reality itself actually doesn't move. That which was here before this universe is here now, and is completely outside of space and time, is I'm going to call it a place where one can return at any time and go sane, because it's the source and the nourishment of creation itself. It's what people would call God or Jesus or Buddha mind, or the Nagual, or it goes on and on and on. So being able to return there periodically is the most sane thing someone can do, other than just stay there, right? To operate from there. Now, this has been recommended for many, many millennia, and that's why I espouse this book, the Tao, because the natural order is order, and it's an exquisite order, and we lose it when we get caught up in all the colors and the movement and the excitement and the ups and downs of the emotions and the what ifs and the what's going to happen and oh my God, or what the latest outrage might be. And so for those who are capable of it, and that's everyone, because everyone has this. This is not something that someone acquires. It's not something that money buys. It's not something you get because you're connected to the right people. This is your birthright. This is what you're made of, actually. It's what everything's made of. And so if one develops the capacity to return to that center, it's like instant sanity. And so one of the arts of living well is the capacity, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are or what you're doing or who you're doing it with, the ability to turn the light around, turn the light of awareness around, and just sit there in the center. Not sit there, just be there in the source of all that is. And there's always peace there, and there's always quiet, and there's always this spaciousness. And frankly, for those who are inclined to Satori or Kensho or Moksha or whatever, there's a realization that it is literally the same thing as love with a capital L. Strange as that sounds, it's love. I know it sounds weird. But it's love that created this universe and love that sustains this universe, and it also sustains each one of us if we allow it to. But the thing is, this is separate than the mind. The mind is full of thoughts, and these come and go, and they tumble and turn, and they fly up and fall down, and there's all kinds of adventures and misadventures and crazy things that the mind does. But the mind occurs, like everything else, in the substrate of the source of the Tao, of the way, of God, of truth and love with a capital L. And so if humans can find that center, and they can, then there's no reason to be even slightly pessimistic. And so my hope is that the AIs, because it's going to take over the thinking part of I mean, they can think better than we can, they can do math better than we can, they can write better than we can, they can spell check someday better than we can, then now what are we here for? And that question becomes much more salient. It rises to the top, especially if we have a healthy economy that's built on the labor of machines. Does that make sense? Okay. Follow-up question?
On that subject, I've been trying to practice like turning the light around during my day-to-day.
Okay.
And I notice if I'm doing it when I'm talking to people sometimes, then one thing sometimes happens where my vision kind of goes, everything kind of goes like, I don't know how to describe it, but like everything kind of turns to light almost, or like if I'm doing it, I'm talking to someone and I'm looking at them, after a while they kind of disappear, and my vision kind of, everything kind of, it's like when you stare at the sun and you look at something, it just kind of
blurs out into white light.
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe you're trying too hard, and maybe you're not the awareness. So the awareness that one turns around and the awareness that you use to look at someone to speak, those are two different awarenesses. by not doing, like right now I'm not doing at all, okay? So I don't need the awareness that I turn around. I don't need it to speak to you or to wave this pencil or to even to focus on you, etc. It's not the thinking mind that does the turning around. And ultimately there's no turning around, it's just an expedient, it's a way of talking about it. So keep doing it, and then ask yourself, well, wait a minute, why would my eyes be affected by this? Because it's a deeper consciousness, not the surface consciousness that's being involved here. And so a visualization could be, you have everything going on, you have your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth, and all this stuff here kind of on the surface of this globe. And then if you go in from the surface, let's say 2 or 3 inches, there's a center. I don't know if I should do this because these are just, but you can do these are second attention exercises, right? So now you've got a deeper consciousness there. And that's the consciousness that when you unlock it, it becomes as large as the universe itself. But meanwhile, your other surface, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, thought, all that keeps going. But you don't need to do it necessarily. Maybe you should practice more when you're not talking to someone. Forgive me. When you're not talking to someone, until you get it down, because you shouldn't have any visual distortions like that.
I see.
All right.
Okay.
But all kinds of weird things can happen in the beginning because you're experimenting and you're learning to use latent capacities, things that you covered over as you grew from, say, an infant to a toddler to a 7-year-old. You covered over all of these capacities, right? It's part of learning. It's part of growing up. It's part of becoming a human being in the society, right? It was necessary. But now, I think it's really necessary for humanity and humans in particular. For a human, and it'd be great for humanity to now understand that we don't have a choice in this matter. We have to sober up. We have to find out who and what we're about, because we're not the same thing as those machines are. We're not at all.
Right.
Okay, so that's important. Okay, sir. Follow up.
Another thing on like my personal practice there, I've mentioned this before, but I've been observing it still when I sit alone, when I sit and I'll do the turning the light around or trying to get to the center. I still get these like jerks in my body.
What kind of jerks?
Like
oh, really? That's what they used to call Kundalini. Probably. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, don't worry about it. It's not that big a deal. But observe it. Observe when it happens. Observe whether you can control it. And then mainly observe the energies in your body.
Yeah, I've been doing that, and it feels like
some people go nuts for that stuff, man. The Kundalini thing. Oh man. Some people just have it, or have a much more easy access to it for some reason, physiologically or whatever. And other people like try and get it because at some point in India somebody had it and they thought it was the I won't say the word, the bomb, let's say. They thought it was the bomb. Something like that.
So
but it's just another city, another, one of the byways, more or less. It can be useful. Like, it's nice because you can refresh. Do you notice that you're more refreshed after the discharge?
If it's a big one, yes.
Right. So it's like go ahead.
It happens regularly, like small ones, and they don't necessarily feel refreshing.
Okay, try not to block them. Open up the energy channels, okay? Let the whole thing go through its natural course. You may need to protect your neck, hopefully not, right? Sit up straight while you're doing these, and then consider yourself lucky. And then later, you could induce them if you want by just taking the energy. So you could start in your feet if you want. Come up your legs.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the the bottom, the perineum, and then up from there, up to the central channel, and then go up. And play with it. Don't get obsessed with it. It's not that big a deal. Let's see what else. And see if it refreshes you, or see what other effects it has on you. But I don't want to plant too many ideas in your mind. But that's probably what that is. If it's happening when you're meditating like that. So another reason to sit up straight while you're meditating, because you don't want to hurt anything. Okay.
Okay.
Question?
One quick one. I don't remember where I read this. If it was in the Avatamsaka or if it was in the Tao Te Ching, but there's a passage that said all things are signless.
That's the flower ornament scripture. Although it could be in the commentary to the Tao Te Ching.
I think
all things are signless. Yeah.
I've been reading that. What's the meaning of that exactly?
Well, it's got many different places where it could be applied, but let me use a simple one. So right now I just saw a bird just soar across the sky. Right? What is it? What is there of it now? Nothing. It's signless. It's trackless. It leaves no mark. And this is that's a huge subject. Find out where you saw that, but signless, trackless, and without. See, so if you want to go into this universe and make a mark in this universe, good luck to you. I mean, maybe you can make a mark that lasts 1,000 years, but it won't last much more than that. But on a more mundane level in our lives, if you're going around trying to leave marks and records of everything you've done or everything you've thought or you think other people should think, you won't get far. You're wasting energy. Let's see. There's another. It's just so rich, that whole signless, trackless, and without.
I have them right here.
Oh, good.
Like,
read the paragraph, please.
It's from the 10. Well, I think they use it a lot, but the one I found was in the 10 stages.
All right, let's see what you got.
As is the essence of the Buddhas, so is that of sentient beings, found in the nature of things. Signs and signlessness are equal in that way. All things are ultimately signless.
Boom. Stop right there. So read the first line. It's gorgeous.
As is the essence of the Buddhas.
Where's the rest of the sentence?
So is that of sentient beings.
Okay.
Found in the nature.
Okay, so as the essence of Buddhas is the same as you and me, right? Sentient beings. So we have the same essence. Now finish the sentence.
Found in the nature of things.
And so is the nature of everything, right? So we have the same essence. The Buddhas, us, nature. The same essence. Beautifully put. Next line.
Signs and signlessness are equal in that way.
Okay, so that bird was... I wish there was another one here, but when I saw that bird, it was a sign, okay? But now that it's gone, there's no sign, so it's signless. They are equal they're equal in a foundational way, and that's important later in strange ways. But you'll get to it eventually. Keep going.
And then all things are ultimately signless.
Okay, all things are ultimately signless. So name something that's around that's 5,000 years old. I mean, you could find something, but it'd be really hard, and we still don't. I mean, we have no idea who did it or why they did it or whatever. We have to elaborate stories from our current minds. But that's just the human way of looking at it. all things are ultimately silent. Even silent, even signless. Even this world will not be here. Even this universe will not be here. This is the truth of impermanence. Mm-hmm. What once was a forest is now the Sahara, right? What was once the Sahara will someday be a forest or something like that. You know, the details aren't important, but you see, so this nature of reality as signless and trackless, and ultimately nothing lasts. These are the foundations of insight. And it's with these foundations that one can cultivate one's understanding of how things really are. Not how we want them to be, not how we imagined them to be, not how we were taught that they were, but how they are in reality. And so that's gorgeous. Keep going. Is there any more?
I mean, there's a lot around it, but that was the main.
So that's from. So give the citation for folks, because that's a beautiful gift of the people who came before us to us.
So it's the part where they're expounding the 9th stage of enlightening beings.
No, give them the book. So I don't have to. It's embarrassing, man. Every time I'm the one who I have to get up here and go, oh, folks, you got to buy this book. This book is the best book. Especially if you're Buddhist, you cannot have this book. Keep it around, you'll see. And if everything comes to an end and you need a book, this is a good book to have. So, you know, can you do that for me this time? It's the flower ornament scripture.
Yeah, the book is the flower ornament scripture, also known as the Avatamsaka
Sutra.
And it's the Avatamsaka Sutra, and it's a translation by Thomas Cleary.
Done in 1986, so we've not had this book in English until recently, from my point of view. I know that for some kids, 86 seems ancient history, but okay, sir. Anything else before we stop? Or another question? Thank you for that. It's really beautiful. See, it says it much better than I can.
Right. I don't have any simple question.
Well, how about a sneak preview then?
Okay. I finished reading Shikasta this week.
Ooh, Shikasta by Doris Lessing, the great book in which she describes how the world was going to turn against white people. When was it written?
Good question.
Doris Lessing was a Nobel Prize winning author who was a student of Idris Shah and one of the most highly realized human beings on the planet. Studied with the Sufis. Go ahead.
It was 79.
So in 1979, which is 50 years ago, she wrote about how the general population was going to start turning against white people, and wrote a book, a whole series of science fiction novels, which then got her. Then she was persona non grata among the literati, because back then nobody serious wrote science fiction. And what was wrong with her? She's a woman and a great writer. She'd written the Golden Notebook. She was the first lady of feminism, and they didn't like her because she thought independently. At any rate, it's a beautiful book, a beautiful series. What'd you think of it?
It is really interesting, really heavy too.
Yeah, well, you know, race hatred is heavy, and
yeah,
she doesn't mince words. So it's very interesting to see, how would she know that in the 70s? How would she know that this is how the world was going to evolve? Prescience is considered one of the attributes of highly evolved Sufis, to some extent. Mm. Well, the marriages. The next book it's called The Marriages of Zones. What do you have it there? 4, 5, and 6. That's easier to read. It's much more relatable. Yeah. It was
3, 4, and 5.
3, 4. The Marriages of Zones 3, 4, and 5. The second book in Doris Lessing's series, Shikasta. And those of you who know music, consider this: Philip Glass did an opera of it. Philip Glass doesn't do a lot of operas, and when he does, there's something. So I didn't get to see that opera. Very few people did. But Doris Lessing and Philip Glass collaborated on that, and I recommend that one. Frankly, it's very, very different than the first book. Okay, sir.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all.
All right, sir. Keep the faith.
There's one thing I wanted to show you. I don't know if you saw this on Twitter. It was
I call it X. I call it X, not Twitter.
There was some researchers observed a orangutan use some plant to like heal a wound. In a way that I guess no one's observed animals do before, in like a medicinal way.
There's many examples of this. Consciousness is evolving, and we're part of that process. And if we could join in with it instead of fighting it, that would be really, really wonderful. But it's not just us. I think it's all the species on the planet are moving at an accelerated rate for reasons that we can discuss at another time. All right, sir?
Okay. Thank you.
Keep the faith, guard your mind, keep it going, and read the zones since you have some time.
Okay, I've read that one already.
And then practice spinning, turning the light around, both in and out of the mundane world. Okay, sir?
What about the other books in the series?
Oh yeah, I would read them all.
Okay.
All right, you're going to read them again in 20 years, so it's good to get a first reading in. All right, sir? All right, Take care. Bye-bye.